Hi guys, so you've been doing Robert Frost, looking at poems like The Road Not Taken and Out Out. And our next poem is called The River Merchant's Wife, a letter, and it's by a man named Ezra Pound, also a person who wrote during the modernist time period. So just so you can see the whole poem and hear it all the way through. So it starts with, while my hair was still cut straight across my forehead, I played about the front gate pulling flowers. You came by on bamboo stilts playing horse. You walked about my seat playing with blue plums. And we went on living in the village of Chokan, two small people without dislike or suspicion. At 14, I married my Lord Jew. I never laughed, being bashful. Lowering my head, I looked at the wall. Called to 1,000 times, I never looked back. At 15, I stopped scowling. I desired my dust to be mingled with yours, forever and forever and forever. Why should I climb the lookout? At 16, you departed. You went into far Kutoen by the river of swirling eddies, and you have been gone 5 months. The monkeys make sorrowful noise overhead. You dragged your feet when you went out. By the gate now, the moss has grown, the different mosses, too deep to clear them away. The leaves fall early this autumn in wind. The paired butterflies are already yellow with August, over the grass in the west garden. They hurt me. I grow older. If you are coming down through the narrows of the river Kiang, please let me know beforehand, and I will come out to meet you as far as Chofusa. So, you don't have to take notes on this or anything, but just to get a little bit background of the poet Ezra Pound, he was born October 20th, 1885 in Idaho. He's an only child. He spent most of his childhood just outside Philadelphia, where his family moved when he was still quite young. He attended Cheltenham Military Academy, and he finished high school and attended college. He earned a bachelor's degree in philosophy, and unlike other poets, his parents were actually supportive of his choice to become a poet. He initially accepted a teaching job after finishing college, but he soon left. He set sail for Europe with only $80 in his pocket. That is definitely not possible anymore. He paid for the publication of his first book of poems, Lume Spento, I'm guessing. He helped create a movement called Imagism, which we're going to talk about more. So this movement began like during the modernist poetry time period, and it was a very specific movement. And what he and those who wrote like him wanted was for poems to be written in just everyday common language, like how everybody normally talks. So nothing fancy. Um, and he wanted them written in free verse, so no set rhyme scheme, no set meter, just so it's more reflective of everyday speech. So a lot of times Imagist poems are pretty simple, easy to understand, which is what you'll see. So Ezra Pound did live in London for 12 years, in Paris for 4, and in the Italian city of Rapallo for 20 years. So even though he was an American and we're reading him as an American poet, he did spend quite a lot of time abroad. In 1925, he had a daughter, Maria, with American violinist Olga Rudge. And the following year, he had a son, Omar, with his wife, Dorothy. So he was definitely not a faithful husband. He also supported Mussolini during and leading up to World War II. In fact, there's a lot about Ezra Pound to not really like very much. He was arrested for treason. And he was found to be insane and spent 13 years in St. Elizabeth's Hospital in Washington, D.C. It was actually Robert Frost who led a successful campaign to free Pound, and Pound then returned to Italy. He passed away in Venice in 1972. So, the poem that we're looking at of his is called The River Merchant's Wife, and it's based on a Chinese poem that was originally written about 1300 years ago by an 8th century poet named Li Po. Basically, what happened was when Ezra Pound was in England, he had a friend, and his friend's husband passed away. And her husband was a British scholar of East Asian literature and history. And basically, Ezra Pound went through his notes, and his notes were based on studies that Japanese scholars did on this poem and others. And so he was definitely getting his ideas through these different filters. So the poem, like the Japanese scholars studied this poem and they took notes on it, and then this British scholar took notes on their note, the Japanese notes, and then Ezra Pound on the British scholars. So there's, you know, definitely it's errors, I'm sure. And as far as like it's not exactly like the original. So in the poem, it's supposed to be the words of a fictional woman in 8th century China writing to her husband while he's away. Throughout the piece, the wife recalls memories of how their love progressed and how she longs for her husband's return. A merchant is a person or company involved in wholesale trade, especially when supplying merchandise to a particular trade. So her husband's been gone for 5 months, and he's a trader. Not like as in treason, but just as in goods. So the poem starts with, "While my hair was still cut straight across my forehead," which suggests that she was just a little girl when the poem begins. "I played about the front gate, pulling flowers, nice and innocent. You came by on bamboo stilts, playing horse." So they're just little kids, they knew each other. "You walked about my seat, playing with blue plums. And we went on living in the village of Chokan, two small people without dislike or suspicion." So the star on the picture shows where Chokan is. And basically, like when they were kids, they never really expected probably to be married. They didn't necessarily like or dislike one another. And then in the next stanza, it jumps to when she's 14. "So at 14, I married my Lord Yu. I never laughed, being bashful. Lowering my head, I looked at the wall. Called to 1,000 times, I never looked back." So even though by today's standards, 14 is pretty young, it was, I'm sure, fairly normal back then. It was most likely an arranged marriage, but we don't know that for sure. How she says that she calls him my lord, and even the capitalization in that suggests that she, like, he's the one in charge, he has the authority, she's submissive to him, and kind of reinforcing that, the fact that she never laughs might suggest that she's unhappy. And lowering my head could also suggest that you're sad if your head is down. Alternatively, or called to 1,000 times, I never looked back. That could also kind of suggest that she's angry about about having to get married, and so being, stubborn. Alternatively, I mean, it's possible to read it that perhaps she defied her parents and married the person she really loved, because in that case, my lord could suggest that, like, she worships him, she adores him, she loves him, and even though she's quite shy, like, because she's young and everything, when it says called to 1,000 times, I never looked back, could suggest that that's her family who's like called to her 1,000 times, like, don't do this, da da da, but she's never looked back, like suggesting she's never regretted her decision. So definitely two ways to read it. However, the first way is probably the accurate way, where she wasn't happy about it, or just really shy because she was just a little girl. Well, I don't know if you're a little girl at 14, but just a girl. So then we've got years gone by. So at 15, I stopped scowling. So the fact that she was scowling before suggests that she wasn't happy initially, but she learned to love her husband. So she says, "I desired my dust to be mingled with yours forever and forever and forever." So that, I mean, the dust suggests that, like, after we die, I want to be with you. And just the fact that she doesn't just say forever once, but it's forever and forever and forever. And the repetition of ands and the word forever kind of reinforces this idea that she, like, wants to be with him for all of eternity. Like, emphasizes, like, how much she never wants to be separated from him. Then there's the rhetorical question, why should I climb the lookout? And just like historical reference, climbing the lookout was a ritual performed by a widow after her husband's death, perhaps to look for other offers to marry that might come her way. So, I mean, her husband's been gone 5 months. She hasn't heard from him. For all she knows, he has died or will die. And so, by saying, why should I climb the lookout? It's like, even if you die, like, I don't want anyone else. I only want you. Just kind of emphasizing how loyal she is to him. Another year's gone by is this stanza in this stanza change. So at 16 you departed, you went into far Kutoen by the rivers of swirling eddies, and you have been gone 5 months. So it's this letter to her husband 5 months after he's been gone, kind of reflecting back on when they were kids, and then when they got married, and then when she learned to love him, and then now that she feels sad when he's been gone and she's lonely. Swirling eddies are currents that move contrary to the direction of the main current, especially in a circular motion. There's a photo there for you to see. I mean, it almost sounds quite dangerous, and so maybe she's worried about him. And then what the things she describes just kind of suggest how like everything around her just seems sad, like the monkeys make sorrowful noise overhead. She says you dragged your feet when you went out, like, which also suggests that he didn't want to go either. Yeah, maybe because he would miss her. Now she's looking around her. She saw the monkeys. She also sees that the moss has grown, the different mosses too deep to clear them away. Which again, I mean, could suggest that she feels like trapped, maybe? I don't know. I'm maybe stretching there. Just not free. I don't know. Unhappy, feeling like maybe her sadness is covering her. The leaves fall early this autumn in wind. So just in wind, like not very pleasant. Like the weather kind of reflects, how she's feeling, and the season as well. I mean, the leaves falling. It's autumn. It's getting cold. She misses the warmth of her husband. Everything's dying. Just reflective of her mood. She sees the paired butterflies are already yellow with August over the grass in the west garden. They hurt me. I grow older. So the fact that they're paired butterflies and they have like their other half, their significant other, is probably why the poet wrote it like that. Just reminds her that she doesn't. The use of the color yellow could also symbolize loyalty and honor, which is reflective of her as a character in this poem. It's interesting how the poet did the two short sentences, each on their own line, to emphasize her hurt, and also interesting how she says, and I grow older. I mean, she's only 16, but it's, 1,300 years ago, and you don't live that long, so maybe she does feel like her, like, time is flying, and I miss you, and, she feels like she's aging, and her husband's not there. So then she goes on to say, if you are coming down through the narrows of the river Kiang, please let me know beforehand, and I will come out to meet you as far as Chufusa. Now, why that's interesting is that the beach that she's referring to is several hundred miles upstream, which suggests how far she's willing to go to see him. The wording is also a little interesting, though, because she says that I will come as far as. So it's like, well, why would she go that far but not further? Just interesting. So that's the poem. In it, the woman never actually says that she loves her husband, but there's a lot in there where you could make that inference. So what I'm going to ask you guys to do is on your poem, think about what ways the wife's love for her husband is revealed. And I would like you to label, you can just highlight them, that's fine, 3 quotes in the poem. And then in the margins around them, briefly explain how each quote could prove that she loves her husband. Or might suggest that she loves her husband. So you can pause this and do that really quick and then come back. All right, so there's a little twist to this poem now. So we read it more like in the literal translation, or in literal interpretation of it, but now I'm going to give you some new information that might change your understanding of both the husband and the wife. So, as a Scientologist has recently pointed out, the river merchant of the poem would have been understood by Li Po's contemporary readers as the poet himself, and the poem read as a love poem to his wife, but written as if from her to him, which was a common Chinese practice at the time. So if you're confused, that's okay. So basically, what this is saying is that the poem was actually probably written like as the husband himself, and he's imagining how his wife must feel without him there. So, in that sense, we don't know what the wife thinks or feels at all. We only know how her husband wants her to feel. And so, reading the poem in this way, um, it's a completely different light on the poem, because you don't know what she feels. We just know how he wants her to feel. Like, I want you to be faithful to me. I want you to love me. I want you to be sad. So what I'm going to do is I am going to ask you to consider this. So, as if this is a thesis statement, the portrayal of this woman was originally written by a man, Li Po, and it was then translated by men, like Ezra Pound. As a result, the wife falls into a female stereotype. So, what I want you guys to do is find a quote that suggests that she's subordinate to her husband, that he's above her, that she's submissive to him. And then next to it, it would be great if you explained like what the connotations, what that word or phrase or whatever it is suggests. For example, if you're doing like my lord you, right? It does suggest or prove that she's subordinate to her husband. What does that like suggest about him? Like, and what does that suggest about her? Like, he's all powerful, right? That she needs to like worship him, things like that. Then I want you to find a quote that would support the fact that she's bashful. So, female stereotypes like you need to be subordinate to your husband, you need to be shy, not overly confident. So find a quote that proves that one. Also, a lot of men think women are stubborn, and so find a quote that suggests that she's stubborn as well, and loyal to her husband. So the women are always or should be loyal. And when you are done with those, what I want you guys to do is just take your annotations of the poem and your highlighting and then submit it to the Dropbox for today. And that's all you have to do. Thanks.